right, guys, welcome back to Downtown Rams. As always, I'm your host, Alexis Kraft, joined here with my co-host, Jake Ellenbogen, and we are back, guys. We took a couple weeks off, really crazy end of the season schedule-wise for me, so I apologize. There's a lot going on. We weren't able to record, and let's be honest, it was not the most fun end of season we've had in a while, us Rams fans. But we are back. We are going to cover kind of how the season ended and some offseason news, what to look for in the offseason. But overall, I know I can speak for me and Jake, and I think I can speak for most Rams fans. This season just did not go the way that we thought it was, big time. Talk about a letdown, talk about a disappointment. Everything that could have gone wrong, Jake, pretty much went wrong. It's hard to imagine a worse season than the Rams had. But I am hopeful because I feel like, and I really, really feel this, and I think most Rams fans who pay attention feel this way too. Jake, this is not a team that needs to go into rebuild mode. We need to go into restart mode. We really just need everybody to get healthy and then do the same thing again, but healthy, if that makes sense. There's a lot of Rams fans, Jake, that are panicking right now, thinking that this means the Rams are going to rebuild. We're going to blow the team up. We got to change everything. Everybody's got to go, fire sale. That is not the case. And you and I are going to make our case for why that is not the case in this episode. But Jake, overall, what was your opinion of this season? And that's kind of a loaded question because it's hard to make a good opinion based on a season with so many injuries. But overall, how do you feel now that the Rams season is over?
I mean, it feels good that it's finally over. It's always bittersweet, even if your team is bad, because I mean, you only get 17 games in an NFL season, but yeah, it definitely feels good. I think we needed the kind of break, I guess, from it in a sense. I still, I'm constantly talking about the Rams on Twitter, live streams, podcasts, whatever, but it's still a mental break to not have to preview a whole week. I know I know you already know what I'm talking about, Alexis, but not everyone does. Like it's kind of a new way to cover the team during the offseason. And the offseason started way earlier than most of these teams and obviously where they want to be right now. But it's going to be a fun offseason. I think that's one takeaway. If you can take anything away from this season, it led to probably one of the most just unpredictable off seasons I think we're going to see this team ever have. I mean, we have no idea where they're going. They could do a lot of different things. Like you're saying, I don't think they need to do anything drastic. They don't have to, but at the same time, who knows? So yeah, it's certainly interesting. I had it brought up to me, the Denver Broncos, obviously the whole Peyton Manning, let's go and win the Super Bowl with Peyton Manning. And then they never recovered after that. They've still been kind of spiraling and haven't been able to get back to where they were after Peyton retired. That is the cautionary tale of what the Rams are doing. But I think the Rams are better than that Broncos team, if I'm being honest. And Peyton Manning is nowhere near when he retired to where Stafford is right now. So, I think, yeah, it's certainly a cautionary tale. It's something to keep in mind, but I just think there's nothing to really truly compare it to because Sean McVay is 36 years old. He'll be 37 in a little bit. And he already has a Super Bowl under his belt and he's been in 2. So I don't know if there's anything to really compare to that. But we'll see. I mean, we'll talk about it. We'll get into it. But, my thoughts on that, essentially, really fun off season on the way.
And I agree with you. I mean, from week 1 of this past season, the Rams just were injured as hell. I mean, there's just no way around it. You can look it up. It was just like we started off on the worst foot possible and we never recovered. So I understand that a lot of people are panicking and they're thinking, certain players are washed or we need to trade or we need to cut. And I'm not saying that's not going to happen to an extent, but overall, what we really need to do is just get everybody healthy. I mean, if we go with the same roster virtually that we had this year into week 1 next season, I mean, I think we're set up in a pretty good spot. I mean, if everybody's healthy, obviously, yes, there are things that we need to improve on in general, regardless of the injuries. Offensive line, the edge rush, things like that you and I are going to cover. But the core of this team is really, really talented. And had we stayed healthy, this season would have looked completely different. So I just encourage people to keep that perspective, because I understand it's hard when you go 5-12 after winning a Super Bowl. It's like, what's going on? We looked horrible, and we did, Jake. I mean, we looked bad. I mean, I don't think there was a game this season. There was a few games this season that I thought that we looked good compared to the way we'd been playing the rest of the season. But there wasn't really a game this season where we looked anywhere remotely close to how we looked last season. It's just we couldn't. It was virtually impossible. You didn't have enough people. You didn't have an offensive line who could protect Matthew Stafford or help the run game at all. And we'll talk about that as well. But I just think we just need to kind of hold our breath, think positive, calm down, and get ready for the offseason. Jake, let's start with talking about our coaching situation, because the big story for the Rams is Sean McVay going to come back? That was a question after we won the Super Bowl. Nobody knew if he was coming back or not. There was all this talk after we won the Super Bowl that he was going to leave coaching and go the TV route. Then he said he's coming back. He had the taste of the Super Bowl, wanted to come back. Then he comes back and this happens. And then everyone thinks, oh my God, is he going to come back? And then Sean McVay didn't really help the situation by speculating he might not come back. I mean, he himself was openly, talking about how he wasn't sure if he was going to come back. He had a lot to think about, whatever. But Jake, something that I really, really felt in my mind, even when all this was going on, and I've talked to you about this too, was there is no way that Sean McVay would go out on that note. If he went out on the note of this season, I would have honestly been very, very disappointed. And it would have kind of changed, I think, my perspective on how I viewed this era of Rams football. But I just felt in my heart there was no way that a competitor could have the situation that the Rams had this season with the injuries and everything going wrong and all that and just dip. I didn't think that was going to happen. I don't think that that's going to happen with Aaron Donald either, who, by the way, we'll talk about later, basically confirmed on Twitter he will be back next season. But Sean McVay's back, Jake. He came out. He said he's coming back. That's kind of what I thought. I know it was nerve-wracking. I won't lie. I started to lose the faith a little bit when he started to openly speculate. That made me nervous. But Jake, what are your thoughts on Sean McVay coming back to the Rams in 2023?
Well, people disagree with me, but I felt like they would have been fine even without him. But fine doesn't necessarily, mean you're going to win a title, right? And, I think when you look at what Sean McVay has done in just such a short amount of time, it's hard to see, and this is why I agree with like anybody who, has that weird reaction, or not weird reaction, but has that reaction to if McVay leaves, it's over. Because, we've seen up and coming coaches. I mean, we saw Steve Spagnuolo, win a Super Bowl, defensive coordinator with the Giants, becomes a head coach. It's not the same as being a coordinator. And you could say, Spagnuolo had a 1-15 season. They get Sam Bradford, and then they go 7-9 the next year. They're one game away from the playoffs, Alexis. They lose in Seattle to Charlie Whitehurst. Oh, God. And clipboard Jesus. And then he gets fired, right? So it's one of those things where we've already seen this. And you and I watched plenty of St. Louis Rams football, poor St. Louis Rams football, to know we don't want to go back to that, okay? No. I've been saying it all day to people that want to blow this team up because they're worried about it, caving in. I'd rather see it cave in next year, with the thought of actually trying to win, than have it all cave in this offseason by you doing that.
Right.
And then, now all of a sudden it opens up, because there's the thing. It's not going to cave in this year. They're not going to blow it up, because why would Sean McVay come back to do that? Sean McVay wants to win. And when you have a core that has Stafford and Kupp and Ramsey and Bobby Wagner and Donald, it just makes zero sense to blow it all up. And so I think, back to your question, what does it mean for Sean McVay to be back? I think it means, well, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. And last year, as much as it pained Sean, and he came close maybe to letting go of it, it didn't kill him. And I think it is going to make him stronger. And I think it's going to make the Rams stronger. Going through that 5-12 season, how is that any different than what the Ravens have gone through? Since they won that Super Bowl with Joe Flacco, they haven't really been much, if you really think about it. They were a team, they got plucked after the Super Bowl. They lost coordinators, they lost, coaches, all that, and they lost players. They lost their entire Super Bowl defense, essentially. Some guys retired, Whitworth, right? You talk about Ray Lewis retiring, So I kind of liken it to that. We've seen examples in the past, but Alexis, Sean McVay's 36 years old. He'll be 37. I mean, he's already accomplished so much. And what he's done, he's got his disciples, essentially. I mean, he's in a position where he's going to put together such a network of coaches that the Rams will be okay after him. Because they can just go out and get one of those guys, because the Sean McVay tree is ever growing. And I mentioned it on Twitter, and I put the coaching tree on Twitter, projected coaching tree on Twitter. If the three guys get hired, Raheem Morris being one of them, you could argue he's not in the tree because, Gruden, it's not really a coaching tree. It's like a coaching web. But Raheem Morris, Ajiro Evero, Thomas Brown, Alexis, that's 7 coaches, and he's going into his 7th season. That is insane. And so I just feel like clearly you still have teams interviewing Thomas Brown. You have a team interviewing Zach Robinson, who they hired from PFF, and Sean has developed into potentially an offensive coordinator. I think we're just at that point where Sean coming back is definitely good for everyone on board. And I think the players that may be on the fence may have wanted to even ask for a trade. Maybe you're Aaron Donald. Now you're more likely to stay.
I agree. And it goes back to the point of, I think this team understands that they kind of have to rally and get back to where they were at the beginning of this season. It's resetting. It's not rebuilding. It's just getting everybody back healthy like they were before this past season started, and then making a run. If the Rams go into 2023 healthy and they still have a terrible season, that's when we can talk about rebuilding. If they are fully healthy and they still can't get it together and people aren't playing the same way, and it just all implodes, it's a different story. But I don't think you can make the argument that that's what's needed when you just simply had injuries. It's a different story. You don't know what would have happened had the Rams stayed fully healthy. If the Rams had stayed fully healthy, they could have very easily been back in the Super Bowl. And I really believe that. We're in the NFL playoffs right now, Jake. The NFC is not that strong. Now, yes, the teams in the NFC in the playoffs have impressed me. I'll say that. But compared to the AFC, the NFC still is far less superior. The AFC just, I think, dominates the NFC right now. And you and I both said that before the season, that the Rams really didn't have much competition had they stayed fully healthy. And I really believe that. But they didn't. That's, what happens. It's unfortunate, but I think the Rams obviously recognize that. I think McVay recognizes that. And I think the players recognize that. It's no time to panic. It's time to just get healthy, get back to practice, back to the drawing board, and let's do this. It's going to call for a 2023 revenge season, Jake. It is. They're coming back with a vengeance. They're not happy. Could not have been worse, honestly. I mean, at points in this past Ram season, it just was awful. But yeah, I'm really glad Sean McVay's back. Jake, should I even bring up the question about the Jalen Ramsey trade? I really don't want to talk about it because I think it's ridiculous. But I'll ask you. My answer is the Rams would be stupid to trade Jalen Ramsey. But I'm going to ask you, I think I know we've talked about this, but what do you think is going on with Jalen Ramsey? Do you think Jalen just loves to troll Rams fans and he knows the drama that he's creating? Or do you think there's actually a chance that Jalen is leaving the Rams? Or do you think it's a little bit of both? Do you think there's a small chance he might leave the Rams and he's going on social media and making it a bigger thing than it is?
So this is an interesting one. I absolutely agree with you that it is stupid to trade a 28-year-old, arguably best corner in the league. especially when Aaron Donald is out the door next year or 2 years from now or whatever. That's not the guy I'm trading. If I'm trading anybody, it's Donald, and I'm not trading anybody. So let's just put that to bed. But here's the thing, is that I've heard that the Rams have had discussions about trading Jalen Ramsey. I would imagine it's due to the fact that, maybe they see Stafford as somebody that, yeah, we get him back this year, but, we're not feeling great. I know his exit, his exit physical, he passed and everything. Still not feeling great. I'm not feeling great necessarily, about his whatever it's called, the spinal contusion.
Yeah.
That anything like that freaks me out, Alexis. So, I feel as though the Rams could want to acquire picks from Ramsey. To me, it would have to be 2 first rounders at the very least. They'd be acquiring picks for Jalen Ramsey to maybe trade and get a quarterback. Maybe you look at, I don't think it would be this year necessarily. I think it's later picks. But maybe you make a trade this year. You go after Bryce Young or CJ Stroud and you have him sit behind Stafford a year. And that's the crazy move, the splash move, the Hollywood move the Rams make. Or they look at the big Hollywood move. And I don't have to tell you who that is next year for USC. So I just, I think Caleb Williams is definitely somebody they would like and they would consider. So I think that's certainly possible. But when people say it's about the money, you don't even free up that much money by trading Ramsey. Like you free up a lot of money, don't get me wrong, but and we don't know how it's going to be structured either. But you wouldn't free up as much as you would if you just flat out restructured him base salary, So I don't know. It's a lot. There's a lot out there. I was told that he could be part of a trade to acquire Sean Payton. That was before Sean McVay. And let's just say I was not too thrilled about that one. And I've gone on record saying that, but I will also go on record, as I said on Twitter, would be the dumbest possible thing to trade the best cornerback in the league at age 28. I'm sorry. Stupid.
I agree. I think it's a season. I think if it's a thing, it's a season too early, like we just talked about. I think the Rams need to just get everybody healthy and go in with the same group this next season. I also think it might be just Jalen trolling a little bit. He definitely likes to troll. He'll say something super vague that sounds like one thing and then tell, a reporter later, oh, it was about this. But he knows what he's doing. That's just his thing. So I think he's fine. I don't think that we're going to trade Jalen Ramsey. But let's talk about the quarterback situation, kind of that you just hinted at, because we do know Matthew Stafford is coming back. He said he was very adamant on his wife's podcast that he's coming back. He, I believe, has also said since then that he's coming back in other mediums. He's coming back. With Sean McVay, he was going to come back. So it does appear at this moment that Matthew Stafford will be the Rams starting quarterback next season. That is what I believe will be the case. I think, you mentioned the crazy wild scenarios. Definitely do not see the Rams. I mean, I really don't know what they have to trade to get a Bryce Young or CJ Stroud. I'll be honest, I don't think Jalen Ramsey, people would give up that high of a pick for Jalen Ramsey. I really just don't see it. I mean, it's not taking anything away from Jalen. I just don't think people are trading a first or second overall pick in 2023 for him.
No. Just to clarify real quick, 2 firsts, like next year and the year after. So if a trade like that happened, it would have to be to the Bears or, to the Texans. And it would be for the 2 firsts that you get from Ramsey, a second, a third, and maybe even 3 first rounders. So you get the 2 from Ramsey, then you trade another one, and then you go up and you get your guy. They would have to love him. And I feel like that's the only understanding example of why you trade. If you're trading Ramsey, you better be preparing for after Stafford, because that's the one question mark, like I mentioned, with the back thing,
Well, right, but I just don't see that. I just don't see a team giving up that for Jalen Ramsey. I just don't right now.
2 first rounders?
No, I don't.
I definitely
I mean, I'm
think
not
so.
saying he's not worth that. I'm just saying that I don't see a team doing that right now. Uh, it's not really a knock on Jalen. I mean, I don't think he had his best season. We've talked about this just on the show, like this past season. A lot of it, though, I don't think was his fault. I think he had an extreme lack of help. And then for some reason tried to do the jump a little too much. I do think he finished out strong, but I just don't see a team giving up a high pick right now like that, especially not 2 years in a row. But anyways, back to the quarterback thing, you know, what I think is going to happen and probably what is the best thing to happen would be keeping Matthew Stafford. I would try to retain Baker Mayfield. Baker Mayfield wants to start. He's already said that he wants to be a starter. That does not mean he's going to get that opportunity. We don't know. Again, this is not a knock on Baker. Maybe it is a little, but I don't know that he's 100% going to find a starting job in the NFL. I really don't. You see all the quarterback market this offseason, there's a lot of movement. Maybe Baker could go compete for the starting job somewhere, but I don't think it's a lock that he's going to get it anywhere. If I'm Baker, he struggled a little bit with the Rams, but he was far more successful than he struggled. He now knows the system. He's with Sean McVay. He's on a team that is built to make a playoff run when they're healthy. He knows that. He knows that Matthew Stafford also, the health is a question mark. That's just the reality. We're all worried about it. He's great when he's healthy. We just don't know if he's going to stay healthy. If I'm Baker Mayfield, I'm staying with the Rams. I'm backing up Matthew Stafford. There's a good chance I might have to step in a few times, if not for half a season. The team's going to make a playoff run if they're healthy, could win a Super Bowl. Why not? I think that that's what the Rams should do. I think they should try to keep Stafford and Baker Mayfield. If things just go absolutely horrible again this season, then obviously entertain the 2024 Caleb Williams idea. If that's, if things,
that's worst case scenario.
That's worst case scenario. I know people really want Caleb Williams, but I think the timing might be a little off for him to become an LA Ram. If things go our way, he should not end up a Los Angeles Ram. But Jake, what are your thoughts on the Baker thing? Do you agree that Baker Mayfield should stay with the Rams?
I've accepted that he's probably gone because I do think a team will look at the Raiders game. They'll look at the Broncos game and they'll be like, well, look what he did, in spurts with, a good coach in Sean McVay. Maybe if we put weapons around him, we have a better offensive line than the Rams showed and, get him a good play caller. I would look at the Jets as an option. I think they're going to get Derek Carr because I think the Raiders are going to release Derek Carr, but I think he's a perfect fit for the Jets. Actually, I think Baker's a perfect fit for the Jets too. Because he kind of emulates a lot of what they want Zach Wilson to be. Like, I think Baker's a more refined version of Zach Wilson. You look at that play style, playing, being able to run off script and, make the deep throw and be able to run around and be mobile, kind of backyard football style. So, I certainly think Baker would be in play there. I'm not saying the Jets will 100% sign him. You also have Jimmy Garoppolo. Geno Smith is most likely going to stay in Seattle. And then Daniel Jones is definitely going to stay with the Giants. So that only leaves really Tom Brady as the other guy that you would be competing against. And I'll be honest with you, I think Tom Brady ends up with the Raiders. I think he's going to reunite with Josh McDaniels. But that leaves, where does Baker go? I could see the Saints, not sure what their quarterback situation is. They pay Taysom Hill, but they don't even use him at quarterback. They use him all over the place. Andy Dalton is going to be a free agent. And then you have Jameis Winston, who they all of a sudden don't trust. I'm not really sure what they're going with there. So I think he makes sense for the Saints. I think he makes sense for a team that needs a backup. I think he has a chance to start still, which is why I've accepted that he might not be back with the Rams. But if there is no place to start, then I think he would be back with the Rams. I think, he would probably come back to them, but I think it might take a while. And if the Rams really want to strike first, I mean, Jacoby Brissett is going to be available, and if they want a guy like that to have solidified in the backup spot, they still like Perkins. And I think Perkins will be back. He's an exclusive rights free agent. They can easily bring him back. I think Wolford's out the door. And I do think that the Rams are going to look, because think about how they found Wolford. They found him through the AAF. I mean, I think they're going to be looking. The USFL plays this year, and the XFL, their inaugural, return. I mean, they come back. So, I feel like they'll be looking at quarterbacks from there. They'll be interested in guys like Gardner Minshew, Baker Mayfield, Jacoby Brissett. And I had a nice, there was a interesting thing that was brought up to me, and I forget who brought it up, if it was on Twitter DMs or Instagram DMs. I've been getting a lot lately, so thank you guys for sending them. But this one guy mentioned the idea of the Rams acquiring Davis Mills. And I actually kind of like that, because he gives you kind of this younger guy that is more, I think he fits Sean McVay's scheme well. And he showed you some things before this disastrous season with the Texans. He showed you some things. And I like, look, your backup isn't going to be the sexiest option. But I think Mills could give you some solid backup reps, essentially, if you needed to put him in a game, with all that talent, Cooper Kupp and, Cam Akers and Kyra Williams. And I mean, we don't know who else is going to be there. Probably Van Jefferson and Atwell. Don't know about Allen Robinson, but I don't think he'd be a bad option either. So I think the Rams, I won't say they have their pick of the litter, Alexis, because you have other guys, like maybe you go and you get Bridgewater or somebody like that. But to me, like, they definitely have options. I think it's going to be a matter of how quickly Baker decides, I'm going to hold out for a starting job, or I'm just going to come back to the Rams. Because I don't think the Rams can just wait around all offseason. I think they're going to be spooked about this. And the way they react in the draft is going to be very telling too. If they were to draft a quarterback top 3 rounds, all of a sudden I'm a little concerned about Stafford, goes to I'm more than a little concerned about Stafford.
Well, I think I don't see so my opinion of this upcoming draft, there's obviously the top 2. There's Bryce Young and CJ Stroud. That is that's not happening for the Rams. It's just not.
No.
Will Levis, probably not either. I think he's going to go probably mid-first.
He puts mayonnaise in his coffee. I don't want him.
I would not want Will Levis either. The next 2 quarterbacks that, in my opinion, are second-round quarterbacks are Anthony Richardson and Hendon Hooker. I think Anthony Richardson may slide into the end of the first. I think if there's a team that really likes Anthony Richardson, they might, if they're not already picking at the end of the first, they can maybe move up to the end of the first to grab him. But if that doesn't happen, you've got the Rams picking the early second round, and I don't see it happening with either of those guys. That's who it would be, because after them, there's kind of like a big drop off this year in quarterbacks. I mean, maybe Tanner McKee, but then unless I'm missing somebody, it just kind of like you're kind of.
This is why I have a theory. They're going to go with the Georgia kid.
Well, and I also, when I was doing a mock draft the other day for the Rams, Bennett was there in like the end of the 5th or 6th round.
Yeah, you want to tell me they're not going to do that? They have all those picks? I don't know.
I don't really think they're going to take Stetson Bennett, but it would be fun if they did. You and I have talked about Stetson Bennett before. I don't think he's an NFL quarterback per se. He might be like a good backup. He'd be a fun backup to have because of the history. I don't think
he's mobile. Like you can do some things with him, put him in
he's good enough
packages and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know that I see the Rams taking him, but if they're like in a position maybe in like the end of the 5th or the 6th where there's no one there they like really love, it's like, why not? If you're not going to take, if you have an extra quarterback spot to fill, I just don't know that they'll do that. I would think that's way more likely than them taking Anthony Richardson or Hendon Hooker in the second.
Oh yeah.
Because I definitely don't see that happening. But yeah, we'll see about the Baker Mayfield thing. Obviously he wants to start. I think it's just going to depend on, would he rather compete for a starting job, or would he rather back up for the Rams and kind of be in that position and possibly fill in mid-season, or make a playoff run, Super Bowl run with a team that is built for that. But let's talk about being built for that, Jake, because there are a few things, and we're just kind of briefly previewing what this offseason should entail for the Rams today that the Rams need to improve on. Okay. We talk about this roster that is super good when they're healthy, but there are still holes. There are still things that are going to hurt us. Let's talk about the offensive line. I'm of the position that every single position in our offensive line is eligible for an upgrade. I would be perfectly fine with the Rams upgrading at any one of our offensive linemen. That might sound harsh. It's just reality. Even fully healthy, I still felt like our offensive line was like not the greatest. And you look at Matthew Stafford, right? Who now we have all these injury concerns. We really got to protect him now. I mean, we need to build like an iron wall in front of Matthew Stafford, preferably. I mean, we just really got to go for it. So, Jake, looking at this Rams offensive line, we know that we have a pick kind of early in the second round. Do you think that's where we go?
It's weird. I feel like in the second round, they're going to grab like a safety. I feel like they're going to get a guy because last year, remember the tip I gave you, like right around the draft, that they were really, really looking at, what's his face, the guy that went to the Bears, Brisker. They really liked Brisker. I feel like, Brisker's a guy that can, he's got great range, but he's an outstanding tackler. And he just has a nose for the football. Like, he forces fumbles, interceptions, all of that. And
trust me, I watch him every Sunday.
Exactly. So, incredible football mind, IQ. Like the guy is, a genius on the field, but he's a monster on the field. That I get a vibe that they're going to go after something like that. Keep in mind, Troy Reeder, right? We like Troy Reeder. He came on our podcast. Like Troy Reeder is the man. But the Rams moved on from Troy Reeder. They wanted to upgrade the position. So normally they don't pay linebackers, right? They haven't paid a linebacker since Alec Ogletree. And they changed their mold this year, right? They decided to pay Bobby Wagner. I wouldn't be surprised since they don't pay safeties. They haven't paid a safety since Oshimego Otagwe. Like talking really paid a safety. They let John Johnson go, who I think was the best safety since Otagwe, if I'm being honest. They've let these guys go, Maurice Alexander, Rodney McLeod. And I feel like there's something coming where we like Jordan Fuller. He had a rough year, coming back from injury. We feel good about Quentin Lake and Russ Yeast in the back end. So let's go and get like a stud. Let's go and get a star in the draft. A guy that is going to be a tone-setting Minkah Fitzpatrick. And I understand people will be like, Jake, that's a first-round pick that you're describing. But luckily they pick at 36. So I don't think it's crazy. And they did, keep in mind, they did spend a second round draft pick on Taylor Rapp. So I think the assumption was that he would be that guy, and he has not been that guy. He will be moving on. They'll be getting draft picks for him when, we all know the Bears, who have over $100 million in cap space, will probably pay him a bunch of money just for the hell of it because they have a lot of cap space. But the point is, if they're not going to go out and get, a Julian Love, like I have suggested many times, you've suggested, which I think makes the most sense if they can afford it. If they're not going to go out and get somebody like that, they can get one in the draft. And I think that's where they're going to go. But don't be surprised that they also look at wide receiver. There's a lot of good receivers in this class. And I know people don't like hearing that, but I think they're going to try to move Allen Robinson's money. They're going to try to move him out and maybe not necessarily bring anybody back. I like the idea of bringing in Cooks or Robert Woods or OBJ, but maybe they don't bring any of them back in. And really what ends up happening is they just decide, you know what, we're going to get rid of Allen Robinson's contract and we're going to reallocate it. We're going to be able to get Greg Gaines back. We'll be able to sign a Julian Love, maybe a Jamel Dean, and help, bolster this roster. Because right now, I understand not everybody wants to spend money, but they're actually not in as bad of shape as people think. They're 11 million over the cap, Alexis, but in reality, it's pretty, I'm not going to say it's easy, but on Spotrac, if you do some restructures and you trade away Allen Robinson and Joe Noteboom, you could come away with about $60 million in cap space, just like that. And I understand it takes a lot of effort, but that's not even including, that's just base salary restructures that Spotrac allows you to do. You can do a lot more, obviously, in the real world. So the Rams could free up a lot of cap space, and not every one of these guys are stuck on the books forever. So it's one of those things where I think people are really panicking. But this team isn't as screwed as people think. They have a pathway to free over $100 million in cap space next year. They'll have to pay more players. That's fine, but their core is still intact next year, and then Donald comes off the books. So that's the other thing. Once Donald retires, his money comes off the books. You have about $30 million in cap space, give or take. So it's one of those things where, again, I understand people are worried and whatnot, but do not be surprised if the Rams, when Les Snead used the term remodel, they just upgrade positions that maybe they didn't bother upgrading in the past. And now I think safety is one of them. I think wide receiver could be an option. I can't really see quarterback, Alexis. I really don't see that, but maybe I personally would prefer a pass rusher. And I know you were probably going to say that. I think it's time. Okay. Daniel Hardy's our guy. He came on our show. Love Daniel Hardy. They need more than just Daniel Hardy. They can't just let Von Miller go out the door and then address the position in the 7th round. That wasn't acceptable. They let Hassan Reddick go to the Eagles, who was 2nd in the league in sacks, and they didn't really replace Von Miller. So, they're going to have to figure it out with Leonard Floyd. $22 million a year next year is his cap hit, or this upcoming year. Do you restructure? Do you trade? Whatever. He's the 6th highest paid outside linebacker. But Alexis, I really, and you haven't said it, but I feel like that's where you're going. I really feel like, outside linebacker, getting a true pass rusher that can be dynamic, that can help out Floyd, Donald, so forth. I think it's the right move for the Rams.
I would like to see them take an edge rusher or an offensive lineman in the second. Those are pretty much the only two positions that I would be happy with.
Well, you want tight end if a certain someone falls.
Well, but Michael Mayer will not fall to the side. I would be shocked if that's the case. Then Michael Mayer, not tight end, Michael Mayer. But other than that, I would like the Rams to take an edge rusher, an offensive lineman. If they're going to take safety, the only two safeties that I think will be there that I would be okay with the Rams taking there would be like Jordan Battle out of Alabama or Brandon Joseph out of Notre Dame. I think Branch and Antonio Johnson from Texas A&M are going to go in the first round. So I think you've got those two guys that arguably might be good enough to be first round talents. I think that they're going to go in the second. So it wouldn't be my favorite pick position wise, but obviously I like Brandon Joseph out of Notre Dame. Jordan Battle is also a very good player. I can't remember if he's declared or not. I think he is. So
it's that type of year where it's that time of year where it's like you don't even know who is in the draft.
It's too many people. But so those are two guys that come to mind if safety, but I would much prefer. So here's the thing with edge rushers. This is a very, very deep class. And I was just talking to you about this before the show at edge rusher for like 1st and 2nd round. There's going to be a lot of guys. There could be 5 to 6 pass rushers that go in the 1st round. Arguably 7. That's kind of how crazy it is. So if I'm looking at the top of the 2nd of guys that I think could be there, BJ Ojulari out of LSU, Andre Carter out of Army, Derek Hall out of Auburn, Zach Harrison out of Ohio State. There's going to be some guys that I think will be there that are very talented. So I could see us doing that. I still would love to take an offensive tackle, either left or right tackle. I don't care. I've been saying this since I've been on the show. So for 4.5 years, I really, really feel so safe with a very strong offensive line. And I feel like we have not had that in a long time. I really haven't felt that. We won a Super Bowl and I still don't feel that our offensive line was as good as I would have liked it to be. I really want an iron curtain, just an iron wall, like nothing getting past that
There's
offensive
something funny
line.
about you saying iron curtain. I don't know why.
I just want it. And I want, like, when you look at the offensive tackles that are going to be there that you could take, DeJuan Jones out of Ohio State, is good enough to probably be a first round pick, but I think that he's going to be there in the second. Would love him. Cody Mosh, I think you pronounce it, out of I've seen his film out of North Dakota State. He very good. I think could start right away. Maybe Darnell Wright. I don't know if I want to take him that high. Yeah, out of Tennessee, or like Jalen Duncan out of Maryland. There's going to be a lot of guys there that I think can start right away at offensive tackle. I mean, interior offensive lineman. The best interior offensive lineman in this class is, in my opinion, Osiris Torrance out of Florida. And when I'm doing mock drafts, he does fall to the second when you look at team needs. Now, say he doesn't fall to the second because he is the top interior offensive lineman in this class. John Michael Schmitz out of Minnesota. I think he will for sure be there when the Rams pick, and I'd be very happy if they took him. So there's a lot of options, I think, at offensive line for the Rams when they pick. And I would not be surprised, Jake, if they go offensive line, because like we've got to protect Matthew Stafford. Like if he's coming back, like you have to do everything you can. And it was not cutting it this past season at all. Even healthy, I don't know that it would have cut it. So we'll see. I mean, that's my preference. Offensive line, edge rusher. I think that's probably the top two the Rams would go. I wouldn't be surprised if they go safety, like you said. I don't think they're going to go corner. I know a lot of people are like, maybe they'll grab a corner. I don't think they're going to take a corner that high, just because of the success that Jacoby Durant has had. I mean, if you keep Jalen Ramsey, probably going to keep Troy Hill. I just don't see it happening in the second round. I don't see that. I don't see a
probably
corner.
Fourth though.
Yeah, I think mid round. They're definitely going to take. I could see them taking a corner for sure, mid to late rounds. Yeah. I do not think they're going to take a wide receiver, and here's why. I think a core of Kupp, Van Jefferson, Ben Skoranek, and Tutu Atwell is actually very solid. I think you're right. I think you're going to. I think they're going to trade Robinson.
Yeah, I feel like they're going to trade Robinson.
They will probably. They will probably draft someone later.
You know,
they will probably draft someone later.
Yeah, I could see that. I think here's the thing. I think with them potentially getting Mike LaFleur, who's expected to be the offensive coordinator, if they do that, Mike LaFleur brings a renewed focus to the run game. Like, you of all people, you and I should be jumping up and down. I watched this guy with the Jets. Jets fans hate him because he's not like the greatest play caller. I think really what it was is he's another, he's not McVay, but he's a great play designer, and he focuses so much on the run game. Guess what? For your boy Kyren Williams, I guess our boy Kyren Williams, Kyren Williams is going to potentially have an offensive coordinator as long as they figure this thing out and Mike LaFleur is the guy, like everyone's saying. Kyren Williams is going to have an offensive coordinator that was responsible for 87 receptions going to running backs this year, Alexis. Talk about pass catching out of the backfield and just running the ball. I think it's going to be, I know Sean McVay's calling the plays this year once again, and I don't think he's going to stop. But I'm okay with it if he's willing to bring in a guy like that from Shanahan's offense and just have him in his ear like, hey, you got to run the ball. We got to run the ball more. We got to commit to the run. And the reason I bring this up is because look at what they found last year after you had the Gary or the whatever Gilliam, I forget his name, but Gilliam, the tight end for the Bills. After that game, Sean McVay emulated exactly how the Bills used Gary Gilliam. He emulated that with Ben Skoranek at fullback. That was the next game. So they have that in their arsenal. And I think they're going to go to that. And really what I think my thing is, they know Skoranek isn't going to start because they're going to go out and they're going to want to upgrade wide receiver. He's not going to be a starting wide receiver. He'll be a rotational guy. But they love him and they love his blocking that they could move him to fullback / tight end. And I wouldn't be surprised if that's the direction they're going in. Because
with Skoranek?
Yeah, I think that's the direction they want to keep him on the field, but they can't commit to him playing over, Van, Cooper Kupp, whoever they bring in, Atwell, etc. So I think that having LaFleur, they'll use that more, I think. At least that's my theory.
Well, Skoranek is the best one-on-one receiver in a way on the Rams. You
Cooper
think of
Kupp,
that,
but yeah.
Well, Cooper Kupp, but that's not in the way that I'm meaning it. I'm meaning like think of the catch in the Raiders game, right?
Yeah.
And I finally was like, that's what it took for them to finally use Ben Skoranek the way that he was used his entire college career. Like it was like that one play, right? Skoranek is kind of like a utility wide receiver in a way. Like I think he's his best. Ben Skoranek is at his best when you are giving him that ball, like a one-on-one high jump ball. Cooper Kupp is also very good at it, but this is like Ben Skoranek's like bread and butter, right? He doesn't have the entire skill set Cooper Kupp has. Like Cooper Kupp is 1,000 out of 10, right? Like unicorn. But then when you talk about everybody else, you look at Ben Skoranek, that is how the Rams need to use him. Which we've talked about, using him as a fullback / tight end. I like that. I think that gives him a reason to stay on the field. I still think that it's enough for him to be considered like in the starting 4 wide receivers. Now, what I do think is going to happen is I think they probably will take a receiver, maybe in the 5th, maybe in the 6th, maybe even the 4th, that would have a different skill set than all the guys that they already have on the field. I don't think they're going to take a receiver very high. I don't think they need to. I think it'd be a waste of a pick. I think there's other positions that
need to either.
We need. Like if the Rams took a wide receiver in the 2nd round, I think collectively the Rams fan base would just like lose their mind. I just don't think it's needed. There's so many other positions that we could upgrade at. If they take a running back in the 2nd, which some people think they're going to do, I will also lose my mind. Like guys, we have good offensive pieces. Like Cooper Kupp, Van Jefferson, Ben Skoranek, and Tutu Atwell are very solid. Tyler Higbee redeemed himself. I don't want to be like Tyler Higbee super solid because he did have a shaky season, but I still have faith in Tyler Higbee. Running back.
Good start with Stafford though, and then I think he kind of tailed off. He got hurt. I think he played the whole year injured. And we found that out, right? Floyd played the entire year injured. Higbee, Jalen he's getting shoulder surgery. So yeah, I think that's why he fell off. I agree with you. I wouldn't be surprised they also drafted a tight end as well, knowing Sean McVay.
Well, the running back situation, Cam Akers, Kyron, I think we're solid there. I know a lot of people don't like that. I wouldn't be surprised if the Rams took a running back again, like in the late rounds. I think we do need a 3rd running back. It's not going to be Malcolm Brown. So either they go sign somebody or they draft somebody late. As far as the tight end thing, there's not a tight end that I could see the Rams taking in the 2nd round. There's not, I don't know. There's going to be talent there, but I felt a little bit like Bryson Hopkins was, I don't know if the Rams were like using him more out of necessity or if they wanted to see more from him or what. I wouldn't be surprised if they like try a little bit with Bryson Hopkins. Maybe they draft somebody mid-round. I don't know. Maybe Michael Mayer falls to the end of the 1st and the Rams do something crazy and go up and get Michael Mayer.
Hey, remember there was a player by the name of DK Metcalf. You and I sat here and were like, when is he hasn't gotten picked? What? Like,
you know what we need? I need Michael Mayer. If you're listening to this, Michael Mayer, I need you to botch your combine. I need you to pick a drill. Maybe it's a 3-cone drill. I need you to do something just enough to kind of make teams a little nervous. And maybe you'll fall and come to the Rams. I just don't see that'll happen. Michael Mayer is like a generational tight end, in my opinion, and most people's opinion who watch him. He's
very
insanity.
good.
Insanity.
He's like Kittle and Hawkinson, and
he's everyone in one. He's just like this hybrid freak athlete, but maybe he'll botch something at the combine. And, I'm not saying he will. I'm not saying he won't. Maybe the Rams, maybe he's there at 28 or 29 and the Rams are like, we want Michael Mayer on and think of if he's a good blocker, our offensive line.
That's kind of why I see it was a Darnell Washington, tight end for Georgia.
Yeah, he'll probably be there when we pick.
I still feel like they're going to love his blocking because that guy will block downfield for 20 yards. And it's like, Michael Oher in the freaking blind side. Like,
I like Darnell Washington. I just still wouldn't, like, of all the team needs we have in the second, I really don't want a tight end.
Either.
But we'll see. But guys, yeah, I think overall, just like as we wrap this up, I think Rams fans for the most part are all on the same page. I think that it is obviously natural that a lot of people are like freaking out. I get that, but just to take a step back, you just have to realize that we most likely are going to have our same exact core going into next season. There's going to be some guys missing. You know, you talk about like a Taylor Rapp. Maybe they cut some of the offensive linemen, trade Allen Robinson, whatever. But I think that we're still going to have, for the most part, our same core. I think we need to nail this draft. I really think we need to nail this draft. I think we need to try and get some sneaky free agent signings in there as well. But I'm not worried. And Jake and I will also be interviewing draft prospects on our show per usual this offseason. So you never know. Sometimes we get a future Ram in there. Hopefully we'll see. That's very exciting. But
I'm very excited for that.
The rest of our episodes are going to be very draft and off-season centric. And of course, more news will come out and we'll cover it as it happens. Yeah. But guys, we're now in off-season mode for the Rams. You know, playoff football is going on. Unfortunately, the Rams aren't there. Hopefully it's different next year, this time of year, Jake.
Hopefully. I mean, I'll end it with this. To your point about the offensive line, it's very important to realize they just let the offensive line coordinator go, or offensive line coach go.
Yeah.
When you do something like that, it doesn't guarantee that the offensive line you have now is going to stay, you know? And I feel like they would only do something like that because I got to say, I disagree with letting him go. I don't think Carberry was the issue. I mean, they had injuries. I don't know how that's Carberry's fault. And he wasn't working with much towards the end of the year. But, you know, I think you're going to look at these guys and, you know, essentially I think they're going to try to hold on to a bunch of them. They found a lot of depth, I think, this year. You know, you found out that Chandler Brewer can play. Like, Chandler Brewer is not bad. He's a guy, you know. Ankrum, you didn't really find a lot out about him. I mean, that he should probably win Man of the Year, but, you know, I think they like Ankrum a lot. He'll be back as a depth piece. You know, David Edwards is a free agent. He's coming off 2 back-to-back concussions. It kind of feels eerily similar to what Cooks went through. I don't know how expensive he's going to be because of that. So we'll see what ends up happening with him. Noteboom is coming off a injury that 40% of NFL players never come back from. And you're talking about a guy that has to move laterally in his pass sets and shuffle. I know offensive linemen have torn their Achilles before, but I'm very concerned about Noteboom's long-term trajectory with that injury. Then you have Alaric Jackson, who is just, I love Alaric Jackson. You know, but at the same time, you know, he has the blood clots. I'm very concerned about that, or at least not very, but I'm a little concerned about that. I think it definitely warrants concern. He was playing well, then he has the blood clots. Now he's out for the rest of the year. So that's something I hope, you know, he'll be okay and ready to go. He sounded like he's going to be fine. You know, talk to him on Twitter, and you know, he had a lot to say about the offensive line. I don't know if you saw that, Alexis, but it's very interesting. Mm-hmm. Brian Allen is somebody we've talked about where it's like, do they move on from him just for the sheer fact that he's never healthy? I know they love the guy, but it's hard to rely on him because, you know, you have Coleman Shelton, who's also getting banged up, but he's healthier than Brian Allen. So there's a lot of different pieces here. You know, like, again, I actually just saw your video. I was going through cleaning out my hard drive and I saw your video from like episodes ago, you know, before the season started. And you were like, yeah, I actually am not really feeling great about this depth right now. Like it was during the preseason. And you were like, yeah, you know, this depth isn't making me feel very good. Like, I understand they're playing with third stringers, but, you know, and I wasn't really overly impressed with Logan Bruss. He struggled, you know, and it's one of those things where I think the worst thing about Bruss's injury is that he didn't get a chance to really develop at all this year. because he was just rehabbing. So can you just assume Bruss is in the mix next year? I don't think so. I think you can assume he's depth, but I cannot say for 100% doubt or without 100% doubt that he is 100% going to be starting. I just can't say that. I think the only guy that is 100% starting next year is Rob Havenstein. The guy that I'm actually really bullish on is Alaric Jackson as the left tackle. I think he could come back as the left tackle. I think he could play left guard. But I think Jackson will be there. I think Havenstein will be there. I think Shelton will be there. I don't know about everyone else. It's kind of a wait and see, but I do think whoever they get as offensive line coach is going to be very telling because let's not forget if they go out and they get Bill Callahan or somebody like that, some really good offensive line coach, they have connections. They have guys they like. If those guys are in free agency, they might go after them, right? So, something to keep in mind.
Yeah, I mean, as long as they just upgrade to the best of their ability, that's all I can ask for. I think, whether that's through free agency, whether it's through the draft, maybe you're sitting in the second or third round, there's a guy there, maybe like a Jarrett Patterson out of Notre Dame or John Michael Schmitz out of Minnesota. I think you got to grab those guys. I can't imagine the Rams are okay with what they've kind of, in my opinion, been doing with the offensive line. It's like, well, we'll do it. It's just not at the top of our priority list. I think that has to change because we see that pretty much every year, and it's just slowly kind of been collapsing, and then you see what happened this past season. I mean, it's just not going to work if you want Matthew Stafford or really any quarterback to be successful. I mean, Baker Mayfield had the same problem, with us this year. You have to have a solid offensive line. But guys, we're going to be back. That was just kind of our preview for the offseason episode. I mean, we're not even technically in the offseason, but unfortunately we are for the Rams. So we just wanted to kind of get a head start on talking about the offseason. We will be back talking more about the offseason news that breaks, our thoughts on the draft, anything like that. We'll have our prospect interviews airing on the show starting after the Super Bowl with NFL draft prospects, which we love doing. We love having them on the show. If there's anyone specifically you'd like us to ask on the show, please message us and let us know. We've been in the process of scheduling everybody, so maybe there's someone that we're missing that you guys want us to interview. We'd love to interview them. So we'll be back soon, guys. As always, if you like what you hear, please like and subscribe. You can follow us on social media at Downtown Rams. You can follow me on Twitter at the Alexis Kraft. You can follow Jake at JK Bogan. We'll be back soon, guys. But until then, stay safe, take care, and go Rams.
If you haven't joined Prize Picks yet, you need to do it this season. Prize Picks allows you to pick up to 5 player props, and it gives you the option to 10x your winnings. Look at this right now. Tom Brady right now, for a limited time only, is a free square because unless he gets hurt, he is going to be getting that 0.5. I'm going to select Tom Brady. I'm going to select Josh Allen going 275.5. Matthew Stafford going 265.5. We'll just throw Lamar Jackson in here, and let's just throw Justin Fields gets more than 191.5. So what you do here, you put more or less if you believe Lamar Jackson gets less than that. And there you go, 10x your winnings if this pays out. You will actually get paid out even if you only hit 3 of them. You'll get 0.4 times your money back. You'll get 2 times. You'll double your money if you get at least 4 out of 5. Deposit today by using our promo code DTRAMS, and you'll get up to a $100 bonus match.